thank you for being here tonight. Really looking forward to this one. Can we just start by giving a very big welcome back to David Harper?
Trying to navigate my way in here with my key and everything else.
With the microphone in front, it does feel a little bit like you're locked in, doesn't it?
I should be used to it by now, really.
So we'll do a sort of rough where we're up to so far. You started this exploration into the Christian faith.
Sure.
Because of the changes that you saw in the life of your daughter.
Absolutely.
Who is actually here tonight.
She's in the room.
It's very, very nice to meet you, Hattie.
On the front row.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. And you started off with the idea of you just want to find out what's true.
Absolutely, a search for the truth.
Yeah.
Initially, is God real?
Yes. So that was your initial point.
Yeah.
Is God real? You started with creation. That's where you began.
Yeah.
Looking at the origins of the universe.
Yes.
Although actually,
in reality, creation.
Yes. Yeah. Because creation implies creator.
Yes, of course it does.
And then once you became convinced there was let's call a first cause.
Yes, or a creator. Yes. In fact, a God. I became convinced that there really is a God.
Yes.
Someone who made the universe, who made life. I don't believe in the evolution theory as Darwin put it in 1859. You know, I think we did drive a horse and cart through that.
Yes, we did. Yes.
So I believe that God, whoever he is, made the universe. He made life. And then the big question was, well, which God?
Yes. So you start with the universe. You then came to life, and then you became convinced there is a God.
There is a God.
But then you go, which one? And I think there's many people made the statements, there's so many gods.
That's right.
How do you know which one is the real one?
That's true.
And so I guess the first question before we look at what made you look at Jesus in particular, what was your opinion of Jesus before this journey began?
Yeah, quite difficult now. Now that I feel I know Jesus, it's difficult to describe someone I now know what I thought about them before I didn't know them. It's quite difficult.
I guess that's true of anyone.
Yes. It's like I know you, but I don't remember the time I didn't know you.
Yeah.
You know, so or I can't really describe it. So I knew of this person of Jesus, but I didn't know whether he was a myth or a man. I didn't know whether he was really just a talented magician, or whether he was an amalgamation of lots of different preachers, of good men, over a very long period of time, maybe even several centuries, that over time had kind of morphed into a historical myth and a good philosopher and somebody with good teachings. But first of all, I needed to discover whether or not this person, Jesus of Nazareth, actually lived. I didn't know. Because my knowledge of him and of Christianity was genuinely schoolboy, and in fact worse than schoolboy. But it made me feel a lot better, because when I was going out into the world filming for BBC, I was chatting to people, you know, my crew and people I would meet, and they go, you know, see you on Bargain Hunt, and then I'd get into a conversation with them. And one of the questions I would ask them was, do you think that Jesus was a real person? And it was very interesting because it was a 50-50 split. Half of the people asked believed that Jesus was really a real person, and the other half thought he was a myth. But interestingly, of the 50% who believed he was a real person, only about a quarter of them believed that he was truly God.
Yeah.
The rest, when pushed, hadn't really thought about it, but when pushed, believed that he was just a good teacher.
Yeah.
And someone to follow, you know, morally and ethically, and there's nothing wrong with him, but I don't believe that he was really God.
Which is interesting when we'll get into a bit later what he actually said.
Yes.
Because that becomes a very strange argument then.
It really does. If you really truly know what Jesus said and what he did, you could never describe him as just a good preacher.
Yeah.
He will never fall into that category. And we can get onto that. And C.S. Lewis came up with a great analogy for that.
Yes, and we will
Yeah.
come to that.
Yeah.
So I guess you didn't know much.
I knew nothing,
Yeah.
Luke.
Okay.
You're very kind.
And you never really thought about it.
No, I don't think I had ever thought about it. We've mentioned this before, but I had looked at different belief systems and different philosophies. I'd always ignored Christianity, thinking that it was old-fashioned and dusty and not for me and not for modern life, because I'd been brought up that way to believe that it was just a fairy tale. So, no, I had no knowledge of anything to do with Christianity at all.
Yeah. So your first question was, did he exist?
Did he exist?
How do you start to find that out?
Very easily. I was absolutely blown away. It was one of those moments. It took me, I would say, less than 10 minutes to confirm to me that Jesus of Nazareth was a real person. And I thought to myself, one of these many times, why did nobody tell me this? Why did my teachers at school in RE, why did a vicar that I might have had the odd conversation with, why did he not tell me? You do know that Jesus was a real person, don't you? That's all you'd have to say. The documentation relating to Jesus of Nazareth is indisputable. There is more written about that man within 20 years of his life than any other person from antiquity. More written about him than Tiberius, the Caesar at the time, the most powerful man in the world, the man with all the money in the world, the man with power of life and death over everyone, including the lowly person of Jesus. More written about Jesus by thousands of times than him. So I could categorically prove to myself very quickly that, gosh, he really was a real person. Doesn't make him God, but it makes him a real person.
Now, there could be a comment made by people, well, surely all the people who were writing about Jesus were people who believed in Jesus.
Yeah, not true.
Is there any documentary evidence of people who weren't following Jesus?
Yes, and stacks of it, and that's what I wanted. If you remember, I did say that when I went on this search, I didn't want to be led down a path with Christians. I didn't want to just hear from Christians.
No offense.
Yeah, I think they're used to it by now. I wanted to hear the opposite, from the atheist. You couldn't get more different to a Christian than an atheist. And so I looked at evidence from people at the time and around that time who were not Christians, who were Jewish, historians, who were Romans, who were emperors or people that worked for the Roman overlords. There is stacks and stacks of evidence confirming that he lived.
Putting you on the spot a little bit here,
yeah.
Can you name
Thallus is one. He was he was a historian at the time, and he wrote about this person called Jesus of Nazareth. And in his writings, he confirms that people say that he performed miracles, and they say that he was killed. Well, we know he was killed, we can confirm that too. But they say that after he was killed, he came back to life. And there is a group of people called, Christians, Christ followers, who, strangely, are willing to die in huge numbers rather than deny that fact. So the evidence is undeniable, and there is no serious historian in the world who will ever say Jesus of Nazareth as a man did not live. 10 minutes.
Wow.
That's it.
And so your conclusion there is, why has nobody ever told me this?
Well, certainly. This was happening to me throughout my research. The beginnings of time and the universe and evolution. All this stuff, this information, and logic and rational thinking. Nobody, I think I must have had a dreadful education, I think. So nobody told me any of it.
I think you probably had a very standard education.
Probably standard, yes. Yeah.
So you get to this point, and you now, you know Jesus from Nazareth existed as there's this person.
Yes.
But that throws up other questions as to, who was he?
Right.
And where did that take you from that point?
Well, I wanted to know about the person, and so I read and wrote about this person, Jesus of Nazareth, from effectively two sides, those that followed him and those that monitored him, so the Pharisees and the Romans. And I got an overview of the man, and in the book, I think there's about 20,000 words on Jesus. It's the biggest portion of the book, in actual fact. Yes. It could be 2 million words, of course, on Jesus. But I I write initially about a confirmed life. So not proving that he's God, not looking for evidence that he's God. I wanted to know what he did and what people said he did. And so he preached on foot. He walked 3,500 miles over 3.5 years. What I didn't realize is that he was persecuted all the way. I didn't know that either. I just thought that maybe if he was real, he was just a good preacher and everybody sort of loved him. I didn't really know why he was crucified and tortured and persecuted. And of course, he was crucified, tortured, and persecuted because he was much more than a good teacher. He offended a lot of people, particularly the overlords, the religious elites. And the Romans and the religious elites were, in cohesion with the Roman overlords. And he offended them all. Jesus loved everybody. He loved them. It's quite clear. It's quite clear this man, forget whether you think he's God enough, he really did genuinely, oddly love everybody, even when they were trying to kill him. He was quite a strange character. And it is true that he seemed to perform miraculous events. But when you dig into these things, a lot of people at the time said, well, he's just a magician. He's a very talented one, but he's just a magician. And you discover also that even the people that followed him, his disciples, his apostles, many of them were unsure. They were doubtful. Was he really performing miracles, or was he just a very clever magician? And so I write about, and I got to understand what he did in life and what they said about him. And I just found him the most fascinating character and an incredibly brave character, because he became famous, he became exceptionally well known, and this man could have surrounded himself with armed guards. He could have made a lot of money because he seemed to perform these tricks but never asked for anything in return. Never asked for applause, never asked for money. So I found him a very, very fascinating person.
I mean, he could have started a revolution.
He absolutely could. He absolutely could. And that's one of the reasons why he was such a disappointment to many. And then, of course, you keep on reading, you keep on studying, and you realize that he was persecuted and arrested for effectively being a rebel. I didn't know this either. He was put on trial for blasphemy. And what I found strange was he knew that he would be put on trial for blasphemy because the things that he was doing and saying were blasphemous. He knew, as well as everybody else knew, that he would be arrested and tortured horrifically for blasphemy. And he did it voluntarily.
Well, let's get into that part, because you do have the good teacher argument that people will make, that Jesus was a good teacher, a good man, that people have put words in his mouth since. But you're saying he's been persecuted because of the things he's saying.
Yes.
That were controversial and blasphemous.
Yeah.
Let's dig into what they were. What was he saying about himself?
Well, effectively, he was implying that he was God. So we know that. He never denied that he wasn't. He took praise as God. And there are lots of references to in the New and the Old Testament showing this. That yes, he claimed that he was God in human form. Now, you couldn't get more blasphemous than that. Now, that would tell you something about the man, though, wouldn't it? And as C.S. Lewis said, this man Jesus, bearing in mind C.S. Lewis was an ardent atheist all of his life until he really went on a search into Christianity, effectively to try and prove his belief system that it wasn't true, and he became converted and became the 20th century's probably greatest apologetic evangelical Christian, which is absolutely remarkable. But he said, you can never, if you're in a discussion with someone and they say to you, look, I don't accept Jesus as God, but I do accept him as a good teacher. I like his teachings, I like his morals. He said, it's not an argument. You cannot engage in that, because Jesus of Nazareth was one of three things. He was either mad, bad, or God. You do not go around as a good teacher saying that you are God, offering eternal life to people who follow you, if you are not God. And if you say you are God, you're either mad or you're bad. So it's quite a confusing situation to be in. You have to look at the man and make your decision. And C.S. Lewis, as I, and as you, I'm sure most of you came to the conclusion that he's quite clearly not mad, he's quite clearly not bad, therefore he can only be God. So you cannot run with that argument that he was just a good teacher, because no good teacher goes around saying, I'm God, follow me.
And I think you'll often get, when that argument is made, he's a good teacher, it'll often be made by people who've not looked into what he said.
Well, absolutely. Like, I had not looked into it. And so I would have been very happy to go down that road saying, well, yeah, I mean, nobody could say that his teachings are not good. They're fair and moral and ethical. So, yeah, I'd say, yeah, he's just a good teacher. But when you look into it, he could not be just a good teacher. He's one of those three things.
So, as you're reading this, as you're discovering all of this, what's going on in here at this point?
Well, great confusion, because I really feel that something is happening to me. And I'm reading about all of the claims against Jesus. I'm reading the claims against the resurrection, and I'm conflicted. And for quite some time, I really do struggle mentally, because I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't know whether I believe it, but I feel I'm getting there. And eventually, of course, I do get to a point where intellectually I actually do truly believe, based on real tangible evidence that you can read and see and touch, that this man, Jesus of Nazareth, was not mad, he was not bad, and I truly believe that he was God.
Yeah. And we're going to hit on some of the big tangible evidence in a moment, but this seems like a good point.
Yes.
Well, let's start with questions from people here. Is there anything that you want to ask David about? Let's stay away from the resurrection for now. Yeah. That's coming in a moment. Yeah. Let's just on the life of Jesus, or anything that he discovered in the reading, that what spoke to you. I mean, I guess one question I have is, which was the big first shell shock in that reading for you?
The first, I think, was the fact that he was a real person.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And then I think reading the Gospels, Hetty gave me a new version of the King James Bible, which was a bit tricky for me to understand.
There's a new one?
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, I don't recommend it. For me, it didn't work for me, so I got a more modern version. And I read the Gospels, and I looked for investigations into the Gospels. And of course, I was looking for atheists' investigations into the Gospels. Yeah. And it was quite fascinating, because I didn't know that the 4 Gospels are biographical accounts. I just thought, again, they were fairy tales. And reading them and reading investigations into them, you realise that that's what they are, Greco-Roman biographical accounts of a real living person written by people who knew this person or knew people who knew him. It was mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. And yet, a bit disappointing. Because, for example, the very first miracle in the New Testament is what? The water into wine. This is the very first miracle. Think about it. This is proof that he's God, right? You can say you're God, but prove to me that you're God. This is one of his proofs. So he goes to this party. The wine runs out. This is in 1/4 of one page. His mum says, can you do something about it? So he turns 12 jars into 500 bottles worth of wine and leaves. That's it. There should be a documentary about this. It is so disappointing. I say it's like reading parish council notes. And every single miracle description follows the same line. It is absolutely just told as it happened, with no flouncing, no exaggeration, and it's fascinating. And you just think that, goodness me, I could have strung that out much longer than that. But it all points to the proof of it, of course.
Because that's the style of
it was the style of it. And then I realised subsequently, of course, you're so right, it is the style of the time. Most people couldn't read, of course, and so stories, the parables are very simple, but supernaturally complicated, but very easy to share verbally.
Yes.
So you can read the story and share it, and that's how the majority of the good news was spread, of course. Yeah. Verbally, yeah.
Right, now we're giving you all time to think of questions.
Yeah, go on.
Anybody got a question?
I just wanted to ask, as you read the Gospels for the first time, I always tell people when I talk to them about God, I give them a gospel. I say, if you read this, you'll see how amazing Jesus is. Like, you'll fall in love with Jesus because you'll see him. You know, did that happen to you? What kind of things did you see in Jesus and what were you attracted to?
Oh, that's so interesting. When I first started reading about Jesus, I was reading about a person from history and nothing was coming alive. But as I started studying him and reading other people's accounts of him, and I began praying at that time as well, experimenting with prayer, which I found like I just couldn't live without. I was praying all the time throughout the day, and I was actually beginning to feel like I was talking to this person that I was reading about and now writing about. And it's so odd because as time moved on, I got closer and closer to coming to a point where I think this is a historical truth, that this man is God. I feel now, to fall in love with him. And everything started coming alive, including the Old Testament, which was a real worry to me. Things started to bizarrely make sense. And so, yes, I heard someone describe this very well recently. They said that a lady went to, it's an analogy, a lady went to a party, and prior to going to the party, someone had given her a book a week or so beforehand. She tried this book, and she didn't like the book, just didn't do anything for it, it didn't mean anything to her. But she went to a party, and she met the author, she bumped into the author. She really got on well with him, she fell in love with him, got married, reread the book, and the book came alive. And I think that's what happens, doesn't it, with the Bible, and particularly the New Testament. When you fall in love with Jesus, it comes alive. And the power in that book is absolutely remarkable. And that's where the changes come. So I think for me, unlike many people who fortunately fall for Jesus immediately, it took me a long time, I think, to get to know the historical character first, and then some kind of spiritual change. Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's good.
Very good.
Yeah.
Oh, Jill.
I'm really curious about your interactions with your family during this time. Were they involved with you? Was your daughter influencing you at all?
Well, yes, Hetty was influencing me greatly, of course, because, as I've mentioned before, prior to my investigation, so I'm now about 3 months into the investigation, 2 or 3 months in, but I'd had 15 months prior to that watching Hetty and listening to Hetty's transformation and her very long testimony, effectively, and asking her questions and her giving me information. So absolutely talking to Hetty regularly and sharing information with her. And of course, Wendy, who was, long suffering during this period, because I was just spending every waking moment working on this investigation. So sat on the sofa, not moving, asking for cups of tea and things like that. And then sharing with Wendy what I discovered. It was like, what do you think about this? This is mind-blowing. So it'd fill me with joy that I discovered this. And then also, actually, made me quite mad that I didn't know it before. But so in my very tight, close-knit family, brilliant and very supportive. In my other family members, and I don't mind some of them may even watch this, but they do know, that it's not for them. It certainly wasn't for them then, and there was no conversations to be had at all. I did try just to open up interesting conversations, certainly not to preach, because I was absolutely, I don't preach now, and I certainly wasn't preaching then. I would just ask them, what do you know that Jesus was a real person? And I'd talk about him, but there was no real interest, which I'm sure many of you have found yourselves.
Who's experienced that before?
Yeah, I think it's a common thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Ian?
Mine was quite similar. You mentioned about polling people as you were going around, asking people. Did you do everything on Google, or did you seek out Christians as well to find information? Was it solely sort of Google, or did you seek out people who you might think you would get that information from?
Oh, no, yes, I absolutely sought Christians. And I got to a point where I was looking forward to meeting Christians. That's a strange thing, isn't it? I would go to church with Wend, and after the church service, I'd be desperate for the cups of tea so I could talk to Christians. And I would tell them that, I wasn't a Christian, but I was on a bit of a research project looking into Christianity, which filled many an eye with dread, I've got to say. Especially when I would say to them, would you class yourself as a real Christian? That often didn't go down very well at all. And you see, at that time, I'd come to a simple conclusion. A real Christian is someone who believes in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. If you believe that this man was crucified and came back to life, that was the proof, final proof that he's God. And that to me was then and is now the sign of a real Christian. And some of the responses I got from Christians was a bit disappointing, a bit wishy-washy, because some didn't believe in the resurrection. So this was a bit of a spanner in the works as well, because I thought that all Christians would be the same. I discovered that they're not, which is
that must
quite
have been
fascinating.
confusing.
Yes, it was confusing, because I thought, well, isn't that the core tenet of Christianity? Because if Christianity did not have the resurrection, there would be no Christianity. Wow. If the resurrection is not true, then we would never have heard of Jesus of Nazareth.
Yes.
He would have been washed away from history.
You could go as far as to say that if you don't believe in the resurrection, not a Christian.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's quite simple, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
It's quite simple. You can't force yourself to believe in something. But, if you look at the evidence for something, you can make a considered decision, beyond a reasonable doubt. What is the most reasonable explanation for this event? And if you get to a point where you think the most reasonable is he really did resurrect, bang, that's it. Something changes.
Yes.
But I met a lot of, I suppose, would we call them cultural Christians?
Yes, I think that's fair.
Who, I suppose, had been through the system, if you like, but had never got the hard truths, the hard facts, and had never really wanted them. I think it was just more of a social club than anything else.
That must have been a surreal experience for you.
Yeah, it was. I was confused. It was confusing. It was.
Yeah.
And it was quite emotionally draining. I find it very hard to explain, but at that time I was really quite confused. And I do remember literally crying out to Jesus, someone who at that time I wasn't quite sure whether he was really who he was. But I found myself praying and to God and to Jesus and literally crying out to him, saying, what is happening to me? Where am I going? Help me. And things began to change.
Now we're going to put a pin in there, especially on the resurrection point for a moment while we don't. A question at the back there. Oh, sorry.
All right.
Sorry. That was outside of my peripheral.
No problem. David, when you were doing the research for the book, at any time did you kind of look into why Jesus Christ landed in Bethlehem? Mm-hmm. And was it at that time the epicenter of the earth? Because was that an important rationale for why he landed there?
Yeah.
Because the Romans and how they operated at that time, they were so powerful, and he was trying to, in effect, unravel that whole way of living.
Yeah. That's a really very interesting question. And something that at this time I'm talking about, I hadn't looked into, but I did later. And you're so right, the timing of Jesus is absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
There's a gap of 400 years between the Old Testament and the New Testament, at a time when the Jews said that God was silent. There's nothing going on, but there was stuff going on. There were changes in civilizations. The Greeks came and went, the Romans arrived and built this super-state, this huge empire with fantastic communications and one common language, which ironically was Greek, which all of the writers and historians would communicate in for business and everything else. And so the timing was perfect. Bethlehem, of course, is predicted in the Old Testament, so that is absolutely right. So yes, I did find there's so many things in the New and Old Testament that just can only be described as supernatural, because you couldn't make this stuff up, that he arrived just at the perfect time when news could be spread. Trade routes were relatively safe. You know, they were hand copying documents. They had the skills. They
built roads.
They built roads.
Yeah.
They had shipping lines. You could go to Cyprus. You could go to France. You could even go to Britain, for goodness sake. It was perfectly possible to travel. Any time before that, I don't know whether we would have actually heard of this movement. It was the perfect time. Isn't that fascinating? It's brilliant, isn't it?
Even things like that. Rome was the empire across the world that the gospel's going to get preached through.
That's right.
But yet, right in the middle of it, there's this little country.
Yeah.
That's a troubled little country.
Yeah.
That has not complete freedom, but enough religious freedom that just everything was perfect.
Yeah.
Everything was perfect for when Jesus was born.
Well, it's funny, we talk about the fine-tuning argument for the universe. Here's a fine-tuning argument for the timings of Christ's arrival. It's all just perfectly aligned, isn't it?
Even the star, when he was
Yes.
born, you can track that date was set
That's right.
when the universe was made.
Well, that's something that I've learned recently, actually, with your father's book that I've read, which is absolutely brilliant. And he talks about the Magi following the star.
Yeah.
Again, we were talking about this earlier on today, about school, you know, Christmas celebrations, the Nativity. Nobody told me that the Nativity was based on a real historical event. I always thought it was just a fairy tale. It's odd, isn't it? It's all very, very odd, but endlessly fascinating. That's a really good question. That's a very meaty one, that one. I like that. Thank you.
Paul at the back there.
Again, many thanks for coming, David.
Oh, great to see you again.
You said you've been on a journey
Yes.
before you came to faith.
Yes.
And I know you've said in previous weeks that obviously that caused quite a lot of questions to be asked by friends, and some friends come and go. And we've all been on that journey as well in our own lives. But I just wonder, obviously when you did come to faith, like most of us, you'll have been even doing more talk, more questioning.
Yes.
And I just wondered how that was for you at that time when you came to faith with your friends and the family and all the rest of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you know, big changes. It's funny, I did a radio interview with UCB the other day, and I was asked a very interesting question. And it was live radio, so you had to deal with it, and I'd never considered it. And so, you know, maybe ask yourself this. The interviewer said to me, if you knew then what you know now, the trouble that you would go through, because trouble does come your way when you become a born-again Christian. The joy, the peace, the hope, and everything else is boundless and priceless. But it's not all a bed of roses. You do have problems with people, with family, you know, which is terribly distressing, potentially with work and work colleagues and all of these things. And the emotional roller coaster I went through was at times I really felt like possibly giving up. I really was so confused. And she said to me, if you knew about all of these troubles that you would go through before you began your research, would you still have researched it? And I thought, gosh. Well, now I know who Jesus is, of course, yes. But before I knew Jesus, would I actually have gone ahead with it? And I don't know what the answer is. And the answer may be no. I might have taken the coward's way out and thought, I don't want all that emotional upset. I don't want those changes. I want to keep my family and friends and keep my work on TV, which hasn't gone yet. I keep predicting it will, but it hasn't yet. So, but the changes are much greater than I ever imagined, but it's not a smooth road. There are big bumps in the road. But I think those bumps are there. They're designed to improve you, to refine you, and to teach you. So absolutely, I wouldn't give up on it, but huge changes, huge changes. And that, again, points to the truth of Christianity and points to the truth of Christ. Yeah. Because I studied Stoic philosophy for several years. There's nothing in Stoic philosophy that changed my emotions. It taught me how to deal with problems and to, you know, toughen up a bit maybe, but nothing that touches the emotional side of you, touches your soul. Yeah. We have souls. I talk about evidence for the soul in the book. So I want scientific evidence for the soul. We know we've got them because of our transformations, but we have souls and they can be touched. And nothing touches your soul like Christ. Woof.
Souls.
Souls.
Next week sounds like a good one.
Oh, that would be good.
Time.
Yes,
Next time. Any more questions, Cliff? And then we'll move on to the main event.
Okay. Yeah.
Similar question to what Paul's just asked, David. You were 11 months on this search.
Yeah.
Those 11 months you were still working
Yes.
and finding things out. How did that work out amongst your work colleagues? Did you talk to them about it? And what was their response when you began to talk to them about the search that you were on?
Yes, I did talk to them about it. And I think I mentioned previously I came up with 3 existential questions, which I tested people with, or just ran by people in the crew van on a long journey. And we got into some really good, interesting conversations. So that is, how did the universe, how was it created, by accident or a mind? What about life? Was it an accident or a mind? And was Jesus a real person? But that was the extent of it. Once we'd had that conversation, I couldn't go any further. They weren't interested in hearing about discoveries. So I was in my own little bubble, really, working on the road, going all over the place, and declining dinner offers. We'd all go out to a Chinese or whatever after filming. I would go to my hotel room, have food delivered, and start my work project. So no, there was little interest from the people that I was working with, and I didn't feel confident to engage them too much in conversation because I didn't have that much information to share, really, and I didn't feel confident that I'd be able to answer any questions. So I was pretty much in my own world for a very, very long time. Yeah.
It must have been...
It was lonely. Someone said lonely. It was lonely.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why, on several occasions, I felt like giving up. Because I felt like I was going a bit crazy.
You're thinking, am I the only person asking these questions?
There you have it.
Yeah.
There you have it. And it was only a bit later when I started reading investigations into the resurrection from people who attempted to debunk it, did I realize that I was on the same journey, not as an atheist, but I was on the same journey as very many very clever atheists, much cleverer than I, who had gone on a similar journey. So I felt then, oh, well, I'm not alone. And now, of course, I know that there are millions of people who go on this journey every year, but I had no access to them at the time. I didn't know Christians.
Yeah.
And I certainly wasn't spending my time with them.
Well, that is a great segue
Yeah.
into where we're going next. So you became very sure Jesus existed as a person.
Absolutely.
You became convinced that he made certain claims about
Yes.
himself,
Yeah.
that he was God,
Yeah.
that he can't be written off as just a good teacher.
No.
But then he is persecuted,
Yeah.
he is executed,
Yeah.
and, well, for anybody else, that's where the story ends.
And that's where it should have ended.
Yes.
And fascinating that that's where his apostles, his disciples, thought it had ended.
Yes.
Everybody thought that Jesus' movement had come to an end. And as we know, they all ran away, apart from John at the cross. And that's it. It came to an end.
Yeah.
And they all ran away to protect themselves, as you would.
Yeah.
You would. They, at that point, remember, must have thought that Jesus was possibly even a bit mad. I mean, it does say in the New Testament that family members and friends actually thought on occasions that he must be a bit mad. Mm-hmm. And so I think once he was killed and put into a tomb, they probably thought, well, maybe he was a bit. He was great, but maybe he was. Let's get out of here.
I mean, even his own brother at this point is not a believer.
Absolutely. Yeah. James, who becomes an ardent believer.
Yes.
James the Just, or Camel Knees, as he was once called, because he prayed so much on his knees. Yeah.
So we get to the hinge point of everything now.
Yes.
Without this, there's no Christianity.
Well, exactly.
Or at least, let's say, for skeptical view, without this claim, there's no Christianity. Yeah. And that is that Jesus rose again.
Jesus rose again.
On the third day.
Now you see, prior to this, I'd also looked into the miracle claims. Yeah. And it seemed the miracles didn't really bother me too much. The changing water into wine wasn't to me much of a thing. I think that it's perfectly possible to do that now, somehow, with tablets or whatever. And I found that modern science is catching up with biblical miracles, that some of them aren't that dramatic. Even the virgin birth, it's perfectly possible for a virgin today to give birth. It's perfectly possible. So I thought, if there is a God, he's got 13 billion years on us. You know, if we can make a virgin pregnant, what could God do 2,000 years ago after 13 billion years? So none of it really bothered me too much, where a lot of people get hung up on the miracles. But the big one, coming back from the dead, was a bit of a struggle. But I realized that, again, this was the one where effectively Jesus said, I'm going to do this to prove to you once and for all, you skeptics, that I am who I said I am. And this is also the thing that I realized is the thing that Christians talk about when they say, Jesus died for you on the cross.
Yes.
I'd never understood this, and I was too embarrassed to ask a Christian because they would just with great confidence say, Jesus died for you on the cross. I was like, well, how could he have done that? How a man dying on the cross 2,000 years ago saved me? I don't understand. Well, of course, I did then realize that if you believe that he resurrected, then you believe he's God, you're transformed, and your life is saved for eternity. So it's all about the resurrection.
Yeah.
Jesus proved he was God by resurrecting.
Yeah.
And so I had to look at the evidence for it and all of the claims against it. And in the book, I write about the 8 best claims against the resurrection. That's the way I went first.
Yeah. Well, let's hit on those.
Let's do it. Yeah. I mean, really, can I open that up? What would you say is the best claim against the resurrection that you've heard from family and friends and skeptics?
I'll throw one to get us started.
Go on. Yeah.
He didn't really die.
He didn't really die is the most popular one.
Yeah.
And this is the one, you're going to love this, because I work with a chap in TV. I won't say who he is or where he is in case he monitors this video. But he is quite high up in television, and he was once considering to train as a vicar. He was very much involved in a particular church, and he was going to go into the church. And when I asked him this very question, what's the best claim against the resurrection, he said he didn't die.
Yeah.
I said, do you believe that? He said, absolutely. He went into a coma. He didn't die.
That is the most common.
That is the most common.
I went for the obvious one.
And of course, it's not difficult to debunk that. First of all, you've got to give the Romans great credit for killing people.
Yeah, they were good at it.
They were absolute masters at it. Nobody survived a crucifixion. Nobody's half crucified.
There's no documentary evidence of any person ever surviving crucifixion.
None at all. And I write about the crucifixion in the book because I felt that I had to get an understanding of what Jesus went through voluntarily. I realized at this time that this man did this voluntarily. He could have escaped many a times with money and fame and wealth and women, whatever he wanted, he could have had. He did it voluntarily. And, you know, crucifixion, this is where we get the word excruciating from. It's even hard, I think about it now, it's even hard to deal with, because when writing about the crucifixion and discovering what he went through, it was heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. It was so difficult. You know, and don't forget, he was whipped to within an inch of his life, yes, with bones exposed. The Romans were brilliant. That they could whip you to almost death, mm-hmm, and keep you alive to be hung on a cross for 6 hours.
I mean, they'd got it down to a science.
Oh, and the effects it has on the body, and I describe it in the book, I felt I had to, are just absolutely extraordinary. And so I was absolutely convinced and that he died. And we have documentation, real documents from that time, that he died. Nobody with any understanding of ancient historical documentation has any thought that he didn't die. It's absolutely accepted. Yeah. He was dead. And then, of course, he's wrapped in 300 pounds or so of tight linen. You know,
I'm going to say if the crucifixion doesn't get you that way.
Yeah, that would get you. That would get you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, that has been debunked over 2,000 years many times.
So that's
claim
claim one.
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Other people stole the body,
Yes.
hid the body.
Yeah,
Other people stole the body.
Other people stole
Specifically,
the
I
body.
guess a lot of people there that wanted the
Yeah.
disciples hid the body.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, again, that one's even quicker to debunk because these same disciples who ran away in fear of their lives suddenly come back and sneak past trained Roman guards, trained Roman killers, roll away a 2-ton rock and steal the body. Fine. For what purpose?
Yeah.
They're going to be killed.
And
for
leave the
doing it.
grave clothes behind.
They take all the wrappings off, these valuable linen cloths, and leave them there.
Yeah.
I mean, for what purpose? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They didn't believe in Jesus at that time. There is no doubt. They didn't believe that he was the Messiah. They thought it was game over.
They thought it was over.
They
Yeah.
thought it was over. So it makes no sense. That was debunked very quickly. In fact, the Pharisees spread that rumor very quickly. And they said, in fact, that the disciples bribed the guards. Well, if a Roman guard, a trained Roman guard, took a bribe, he would be executed. That's why the Romans built, this incredible empire. Mm-hmm. They had rules and regulations, and by goodness me, if you didn't stick to them, like killing people or guarding tombs, you were executed. So, yeah, debunked very quickly. That's in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's two.
Two.
Two down.
Yeah. Because I'm looking for a new one. It'd be quite interesting.
That would be interesting.
Oh, that is a new one. He had an identical twin brother. Well, the twin brother must have been insane, mustn't he? Yeah.
Now,
well, that sort of is covered. That's the impersonator claim.
Yes.
That they reckon that the disciples brought in an impersonator. Again, for what purpose? To be persecuted, to be ridiculed, and to be tortured and then killed.
that's the
No,
thing.
it doesn't make sense.
The disciples have everything to lose and nothing to gain by that, because
Yeah.
they are, all of them, apart from John, executed.
Yeah.
Not one of them, not one recants. Not one, even to the point of torture and death. And the thing is, people will die, not for something people can die for a lie if they don't know it's a lie.
That's true.
Nobody dies for a lie when they know it's a lie. Nobody.
It's never happened before.
No.
And never en masse.
No.
And never when they've been given 40 years to change their minds.
Yeah.
40 years many of his disciples were persecuted for.
Yeah.
And it's funny, there's a chap called, I can't remember his first name, Coulson. He was involved with the Nixon... Chuck Coulson. Okay, yes. He was involved with the Watergate scandal. And he said something along the lines of, I know the resurrection is true and I can prove it. He said 12 men spent 40 years being persecuted, ridiculed, tortured, and then finally executed for something that they didn't believe in. Absolutely impossible. 12 of the most powerful men in the world during the Watergate scandal couldn't keep a lie secret for 2 weeks, never mind 40 years. So he became convinced based on his lived experience of real people and real nature.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Also with the twin or the look-alike theory is there has been, I don't know if anyone's ever come across this one, obviously his brother James, there has been that claim made.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do that, you've got to hide James afterwards.
Yeah.
That's
very true.
You don't make him the head of the church in Jerusalem.
That's true.
Because everyone will go, well, they look similar.
Yeah.
No point does that happen.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
Different dads.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. And even if there was a sort of family resemblance, you wouldn't walk the same, you wouldn't talk the same, you wouldn't have the same mannerisms.
No.
It would be soon they go, that isn't that guy
Yeah.
Jesus I saw preaching 3 weeks ago. That's not him. It would soon be debunked.
It's like me and my brother have similarities, but
Yeah.
no one's mistaken us for each other.
Are you the good-looking one?
Of course. Sorry. So that's 3 done.
3 done, but
Although that was an extra one, really.
I think it probably was.
Yeah.
But before we go on to another one, if you want to, one of the brilliant pieces of information, which I think is a great proof as well that God has the best sense of humour, is the fact that who were the first witnesses to witness that the tomb was empty, and who were the first witnesses, I know, to see the risen Christ? women. Now, that might be perfectly normal in today's world, but in the Roman world, women had no social status whatsoever. A woman, sorry ladies, but you would not be allowed to give testimony in a court of law because you would be seen as an unreliable witness. So no one in their right mind would make up a story that women saw him first. It makes no sense whatsoever. And if that story was a made-up story and it was spread around the Roman world, people would just laugh their heads off. And they probably did. But then they probably thought, hang on a minute, this is so crazy, nobody would make this up.
They'd have dropped the women from the story very early on.
Very early on. That's a good point.
Yeah.
They would have been whitewashed out in the early days of the church. Yeah.
But you can't because
No.
they were the first.
They were the first, so well done, ladies. Any other good ones against it? Oh, Hetty.
So I have heard mass hallucination post-Jesus resurrection.
Yeah. And that's a good one. And that's a really popular one as well. Yes. And it's one that many people accept. Yeah, they all hallucinated. And that's fine if it was one person, maybe even two. If they hallucinated, you could go, oh, that's a possibility. But hallucinations are like dreams. You have a dream, I have a dream. We don't have the same dream. It's impossible. So all of his disciples, apostles, to hallucinate at the same time in rooms, on hills for 40 days, and then in one instance, 500 people. It's an impossibility. And, you know, to quash that well and truly, in one of Paul's letters, of course, to the churches, he does say, I mean, throughout the New Testament, Jesus keeps saying, test me, test me, test me. If you don't believe me, test me. I can stand up to it. Paul says, test the claim. He's writing in the lifetime of the witnesses who saw the risen Christ. He's saying 500 people saw him. Yeah. If you don't believe me, go and find them. Yeah, most of them are still alive.
They're still alive.
They're still alive.
You don't say that unless you know if you're
confident.
Somebody asking
Test it all the time. And that's what I was doing. I was testing. In truth, I was testing Jesus all of the time.
Yeah. The other thing with the hallucination theory, of course, as well, is you hallucinate something that you want to be true. But at this point, the resurrection was not something they wanted to be true because they had no concept that this was... It wasn't even on their wish list of things to happen.
No. That's a good point, actually. That'll go into the second edition of the book.
That's okay. I think it's Lee Strobel did that one anyway. So we've got... I've lost count.
Yeah, I know. But there's what did you come up with? How many have we done? 4. Did I say those 8? Blimey. Yeah. No, what else is there? But actually, talk about Lee Strobel. Lee Strobel is somebody, and David Limbaugh, who is a lawyer, and of course C.S. Lewis, all atheists, all looked into the resurrection, and all investigated it just like we are now, and all came to the same conclusion. Well, were the eyewitness accounts elaborated over time? We've covered that in a different session, in fact. Then we can prove that the documentation, the New Testament documents written in the first century are absolutely pure. They're 99.5% pure. Doesn't mean they're true. It just means that what was written in the first century was repeated for centuries after. They didn't change. And something that is really fascinating, and I touch on it in the book, and I think it's something to explore going forward, is this, that at no point in the New Testament do any of the gospel writers refer to Jerusalem being destroyed in AD 70. So this is a historic event. The Romans totally destroyed Jerusalem. This is interesting because Jesus predicted that the temple would be ripped down in your lifetime. It's one of Jesus' prophecies that came true. They don't mention it. Had the New Testament been rewritten and elaborated over time, they most certainly would have mentioned the sacking of Jerusalem, an event bigger than 9/11, which would prove Jesus' claim to be God.
Like I said, not only would they have mentioned it because it was a big event, they'd have mentioned it and gone, Jesus said that was going to happen.
Jesus said that, told you.
Yeah,
that's right.
That would be in there.
So we think that the first century accounts, the gospel accounts, are written up to about AD 90, AD 100, but to me, it seems quite logical to think that they were more than likely written before AD 70.
Yeah.
And they don't change. The resurrection is in the very early documents. It wasn't added later.
And the early letters of Paul, it's in there,
Yeah.
and they are written
Yeah.
during his missionary journeys.
That's so
It's
true.
there from the start. I was going to say
Well, there's
something,
another
it's
one here.
gone.
The disciples simply made up the resurrection story. Again, just debunk it in about 5 seconds. Why would they? They basically signed their death warrant. They didn't get money. They didn't get anything. There was no benefit to them at all.
No.
They didn't make it up.
And the thing we kind of jumped over a little bit, but we should touch on, is all of these claims have to be made about what happened to the body because the tomb was empty.
Yes, there is a claim. One of the claims is the tomb wasn't empty,
And
that they got
that's
the wrong
easiest
tomb.
one, yeah.
I mean, again, bonkers. I mean, come on. Romans and the Jewish hierarchy were pretty efficient people. They go, hang on, the tomb's not empty. Well, let's go and check on it.
Right
Or
there.
if they've got the wrong tomb, no, this is Jesus' tomb. Drag the body out, parade it around Jerusalem. The Jesus movement is brought to an end.
There and then.
Yeah. So if you can't think of any others, you're in a good club because nobody else can. So it's historically documented that these people then went out into the world to spread the good news.
Yeah.
And they did it for nothing other than pain and persecution. Someone have a question? Or David? Yeah.
Just for the record, even people who are not Christians, in fact anti-Christians like Bert Ehrman, have now come to accept that the earliest creeds stating that Jesus was crucified, buried, resurrected, was a common belief and circulated in creeds maybe as early as 3 years after the resurrection.
Right, yes. Yeah.
So even the people who don't believe necessarily in the resurrection, but do put out the fact that the Christian community had their own documents within 3 years circulating around with the basic essentials of the faith within them.
Yeah.
I think that's because
Which didn't change.
I've heard the argument made, it's the church
Yeah.
added this stuff afterwards.
Yeah.
The church as a body, as an organisation, rather than a group of, people, didn't exist at that point.
300 years later,
Yeah.
effectively.
So
Yes.
there's evidence, clear evidence that that's not true.
That's right, exactly. So this is where I got to. So reading Lee Strobel and all the other people who had been on the same journey as me, much more academically than me, but they had come to the conclusion that, as C.S. Lewis did, he studied it. C.S. Lewis even taught himself ancient Greek. I mean, I did not go that far. Right. To read the early first century documents in their original language. He went to the ends of the earth to debunk Christianity. He came to an intellectual decision that the resurrection was a historical event. And that's what I got to. And I thought, if I get to that point and I believe that, so I believe in the end of the New Testament, and it's quite clear I believe in the beginning God made everything, that means I don't have to worry too much about what's in between. Because if Jesus is real and he is God, I can believe everything he said. I don't have to question that anymore. So there's a bit of a relief coming into me now. I'm thinking, if I do believe this, I'm feeling a bit more at ease about the situation. I don't have to be able to explain everything, and nobody ever could. The idea that I thought I could was very arrogant of me. You can't. But if you believe in the two events, creation and the resurrection, everything else can make sense. And that's where I got to.
So you've come to that point where you now believe that's true.
But only in here.
But that has consequences.
It changes everything.
Yeah.
And you know that it's going to change everything. And I didn't quite know what it was going to change. And again, my emotions were going up and down and haywire all over the place because it was a bit of a worry becoming one of those people. How is this going to affect my life? A born-again Christian? Now, by the way, I didn't even know what a born-again Christian was. Up until very close to this time, I didn't know that it was a 2,000-year-old term coined by Jesus himself. And I suppose one of those embarrassing questions, a bit like when you say to a Christian, what do you mean he died on the cross for me? oh, I see, he died to prove that he was God, so you can believe in him, so your life is saved. Got you, that makes sense. But when they would say you need to be born again, you know, I was a bit like, is it Nicodemus? Who said, what do you mean, go back into my mother's womb? I was a bit like that. I didn't really get the spiritual side of it.
So there has to be a point, and there's something in your book you call the 18-inch drop.
Yes.
Where it moves from here to here.
Yes, yes.
How did that happen for you?
Gosh. Well, this was when I was really crying out to God. I believe that you are God, but what do I do with this? Where do I go? Help me. And I believed in the resurrection like I believed that Queen Victoria sat on the throne for a very long time. Mm-hmm. It's just one of millions of pieces of information we all have. It didn't really mean too much to me. And I started going through these terrible emotional shifts where I'd get this wave of joy and peace and understanding from nowhere. And it would upset me and fill me with joy, but also make me feel very upset. And I didn't really know what it was, and I felt like it was, you know, I couldn't control it. I could be in public and it could happen, and I'd want to laugh or I'd want to weep. It was very difficult. So stuff was changing. And now looking back, you know, I could see that Jesus was knocking during, you know, Hetty's monitoring Hetty for 15 months. I know, looking back, I can see things happening. So I was very confused and somehow quite distressed, but then things started changing, and I might have told this kind of part of the story before, but I'm going to have to tell it again. And I always find it quite difficult, and especially because Hetty's here. I only gave my sort of testimony for the very first time in front of Hetty the other day at Cedarwood. But and you were there, Emma. But it is the truth. And what happened was that I believed that he resurrected, and then suddenly I had a memory of a video I watched with John Lennox, Professor John Lennox, who's a fantastic guy. And he was quizzed, how can you tell that Christianity is true? How can you prove that it's true? And he said, I think I can. And he described this girl that he used to teach at Oxford. He met her 2 weeks ago, and she was full of life and full of joy, full of happiness. But the last time he saw her, she was dark and depressed and suicidal in actual fact. And he said to her, what has happened to you? What's changed? And she said, I've found Jesus Christ. And it was that moment. And it was a nanosecond, a sudden realization, and a flood of emotion. And that was the 18-inch drop. All of that stuff I held in my head fell into me. And I literally fell to my knees. Because I'd looked for evidence for God. I'd looked critically all over the place for months. But the most convincing evidence, the most convincing for Jesus Christ being God, is the spiritual transformations he brings in people. And I had seen that in Hetty, but in truth, I'd ignored it. Because I saw the transformation, but I wanted to understand what it was. I wanted the proof of it. She was the living proof. And the proof had been shining in my face for 15 months on her journey and about 3 months into mine now. And it was at that moment I realized that Jesus Christ you might have to finish the sentence, Wendy. Saved Hetty's life. Literally saved her life. And once that happens, that's it. There is nothing you can do. Thank God. And I fell in love with God. I fell in love with Jesus. And it is a love, isn't it? And it's a greater love in truth than anything else. That, which is a remarkable thing to say. We know what love is. You know, we love our children, our wives, and our family, and our dogs, our jobs even. They're all different kinds of love. But the love, when you love God, that's a different kind of love. It is, and it is the greatest love. And what I realized going forward now, I kept on writing for another, 9 months, I suppose, 8 months. I realized that once you get that love, everything else falls into place, including other loves of people. It makes life much, much simpler. So that was my moment. But it was the resurrection that finally got me there.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for sharing that. I know that's hard in front of family as well. So I appreciate that.
But it's true, and I think when you become a Christian, you are much more open with things. I am, and it's actually freeing, isn't it? It's actually freeing.
We will go to some questions in a moment, but what would you say to anyone who's somewhere on that journey? What advice would you give them?
Well, if like me, they wanted evidence, then I would confidently say the evidence is there. They'll never get everything. God is not going to come and sit next to you and absolutely confirm that he is real. That's just not the way it works. And talking of love, we love God, God loves us, but he doesn't force himself on us. If he forced himself on us, it wouldn't be love. We'd just be robots. We'd be forced to adore him, and we wouldn't adore him. Being actually humans, we wouldn't. If you love someone, you can't force yourself on them. No. So there's always going to be a little bit of mystery there, and I think extra discovery. So I think you get to a point where, beyond a reasonable doubt, you think the evidence is right, and then give in to him and pray to him. We talked about this, didn't we, with prayer a couple of weeks ago. Pray and unload everything and repent. This is a word that is bandied around a lot in Christian circles, but gosh, it's a powerful word, and it's one that you need to apply to yourself. There are all sorts of things that I've done in my life that I'd never shared with anyone, but I have now shared with God. And it's terribly difficult, and it's painful, but it's cleansing. So I think get on your knees and pray and see if he talks to you, and he will in one way or another.
Wonderful, thank you. And just to round that off before we go to questions, is just this weekend you took another big step.
I did. And Emma was there. So we went to Cedarwood, and Greg and Emma were there, and you were there, Your lovely wife was there, and Shannon was there as well, and we had a great weekend, and there was an opportunity to get baptised. So I haven't been baptised, and I've been waiting for the right opportunity to do it. And the guys that run Cedarwood are absolutely brilliant and totally rock solid in their biblical teachings and beliefs. And I just felt, I'll do it. 10 minutes beforehand, I went to the front and said, I want to do it. So I bought myself a Cedarwood T-shirt, and Wendy fortunately brought my old shorts with me with a hole in them, which was a bit embarrassing. And I jumped in and I was baptised. It was magnificent.
That's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's worth celebrating. That is a wonderful moment.
I'll never forget it.
No, the date of your baptism is like that line in the sand. There's before, and then there's after, and there's no looking back anymore.
No, there isn't. There's no going back anyway. But I just felt it was like drawing a line under it and sealing it. Yeah,
that's wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions as we on this last section, Cliff?
You've mentioned, David, about when the penny dropped, when in your heart you knew
the
resurrection. What were the changes in your life that came to pass after that initial acceptance of Jesus?
Yeah.
You know, purpose or
Yeah.
things like that.
Well, I think, Cliff, I think you've just answered one of them, purpose. So all of my life, from as early as I can remember, I've always struggled with purpose and meaning. And I've always wondered why I'm here and why any of us are here. And I used to think that living and dying was quite pointless. Sounds dead miserable, I know, but it's true. It's how I used to think. And so I would always look for purpose in different things, particularly, you know, maybe in work, in TV and stuff, thinking that might be my purpose. But when you find God, or God finds you, or whatever combination that is, I think your purpose is given, and meaning and an understanding. And I was always petrified of death. And I used to think, well, I couldn't think about death. I certainly could never talk about it. And I used to have this terrible, burning thought in my mind that I must do something big and great before I die, because if I don't, what's the point in living? And I never did actually do anything big and great. I never actually got there. But once you find God and you realize that life is not just that, if that represents 100 years, if we're very lucky, it's eternity. Then I had purpose, I had meaning, I had joy, peace, and hope. Now, that's not to say I wake up every day leaping around, singing hallelujah and life is a bowl of cherries. I don't. Of course, I have my ups and downs. But prior to this, I really did, and Wendy will attest to this, and Hetty, that my life really did run quite dramatically up and down. And I did crash sometimes, and I had a terrible time in my 40s, where I went through a really bad crisis. And during the winter, I would get very sad. I did. And often when I'd be filming, I'd be wearing a mask, pretending that I was the happiest person in the room. That's what I got paid to do, but I didn't always feel it. And where now I run at a much calmer, easier level. I don't worry so much. Not saying I don't worry, but I don't worry so much. I don't get so anxious. And I feel that I have the constant companion of the Creator of the universe, as we all have access to. It doesn't make me special. And I found that through prayer, that dealing with problems or making a decision came much quicker through prayer. And it may not be answered straight away, or it may not be answered at all, but you'd be praying on something, wondering what to do. And then in a conversation with a total stranger, something would happen. And you go, that's the answer to my prayer. That's what I was looking for. Now I'm going to make that decision. So I make clearer, I think, better decisions, because I am in communication with the Creator of the universe. I feel that we all have a life of eternity, and I've got those things: peace, joy, hope. So I think they're quite dramatic changes, and you can't buy them, Cliff. I know you know that. And isn't that remarkable that people don't know that it's available to everybody and it's free? It's a bit bonkers, really. Isn't it? Thank you, though.
Oh, sorry. Over there first, yeah.
One of the things, when I read your book, I was given it by absolute accident.
Oh, so you didn't buy it?
No.
It's very disappointing.
I stole it. It kind of made me think about, when I was thinking about you and Hetty and the journey, when you look back, can you kind of see synchronicity in where you are now, and probably this was always your calling, when you look back on where you were and the doubt and the period where you went through writing the book, where it's very lonely when you're doing something in silo and questioning everything, and I'm assuming that as part of the process you didn't even know what the end result was, but there was a power happening within, that something was, a portal, a message was being sent to you that you had to complete this work. probably what happens in life is that 99.9% of people get that calling and that message, but they choose a different life, where the 0.1%, like yourself, David, have been given that message, and you know you have to go through and fulfill because of the gift that you've been given. Mm-hmm. Does this make sense?
I think it does, and I agree. I do think that all of my life I've been leading up to this. This doesn't make me special at all. It makes me a normal born-again Christian, because I think every born-again Christian is given talents, and that can be to do, it can be just to be kind to people, it can be baking cakes, it can be running a huge corporation and spreading the word of God. So I think, yes, I do think that when I first became a born-again Christian, in some ways I was a bit mad, a bit, not angry, it's not the right word, but a bit disappointed that I wasn't one before. That I started thinking, if I was a born-again Christian at the age of 20, I would have done so much more with my life. I wouldn't have been so selfish and looking to try and make money and try and get famous. All of that, which has brought no fun, really, in truth. I would have had more fun just having a normal job, having friends and having normal weekends. Genuinely, I've been very disjointed throughout my whole working career, trying to get somewhere. I thought that if I had been a born-again Christian at 20, I could have done more with my life. And then I realised that what I've learned so far right up to this point is perfect for what I'm now able to do. So whether I get to do it for a week or another 30 years, that's fine. But I've served my apprenticeship, and now my job is to work for Jesus in whatever format that takes. And Hetty's job is exactly the same, but she has got it much younger than me. She's a music writer and producer and singer. She's changed from heavy dark rock to heavy Christian rock, but that's Hetty's role. And we've talked about this. We were having dinner in Soho not long ago, and we said, we both actually work for Jesus. What a boss! What a great boss to have. So, and that goes to your point, Cliff. I think that's the meaning and the purpose. So yeah, I do think I've been led to this point, but it certainly doesn't make me special.
It's Colin, hasn't it? Yeah.
I've always believed in God, believed in Jesus, went to Sunday school, and I could believe in the crucifixion, but the stumbling block for me was the resurrection.
That was a stumbling block?
That was my stumbling block.
Yeah.
So I come to a conclusion, because I was full of science fiction. I was always looking for UFOs.
Yeah.
And I had to somehow put him into a box that I could understand.
Right.
So I thought, well, maybe he was from another planet.
Yeah, yeah. I think we've all been that route.
Right. Well,
yeah.
Obviously, I met a guy that gave me the gospel, told me that Jesus loved me, and he led me in a prayer that afternoon. I was working in the hospital, and I prayed this prayer, but I spent the rest of the day thinking, is that true? Does God really love me?
Yeah.
Is he really out there? So when I went into my little room that evening, I looked up at the ceiling, and I said, Lord, if you're really out there and you really love me, please come to me, I need you. And within about 2 or 3 days, I was working on the ward. I started to have this awareness that he was with me, not physically, of course, but he was with me. I was talking to him as I was doing my work in the ward. And within 2 or 3 days of that decision, I knew that Jesus was the Son of God. I knew that he'd risen from the dead, and I'd no longer look for UFOs, because when I found Jesus, I found everything I was looking for.
That's fantastic. And it's those testimonies, I must say, that really helped me on my road as well. Just hearing that is music to my ears, because I was devouring YouTube testimonies from people, and I was looking into their eyes, and I was thinking, are you telling the truth? And I was thinking to myself, what are they getting out of it? They've only got 1,000 views. I know from a YouTube channel, you don't earn any money from 1,000 views. And they're real, aren't they? And they are so convincing. And really, it's like Hetty's testimony was not the real proof, because you've got the foundational proof, but the most convincing proof. And every testimony is fascinating. Oh, that is lovely. Lovely to hear. How long ago was that?
Well, I've known you now since I was 23.
Oh,
and oh,
you're 28 now.
The joy inside of me. I am so glad I bowed the knee and asked the dear Lord to guide me. And I'm 72 in a couple of weeks.
Beautiful.
And he's never failed me yet.
Wow.
And
wow.
he never
wow.
will.
Wow. That is marvellous. Marvellous.
Thank you, David, very much for tonight.
Great.
Can we just give a big thank you?
Oh, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.